looking at the list, I know their resumes aren't as thick, but if you're telling me Ben Johnson and Liam Cohen are the 13th and 14th best coaches, and I watched what they did in year one, this is the greatest group of coaches in league history because Ben Johnson is outstanding. It's like when McVay went to the Rams, first year, they go from unwatchable to like double-digit wins. You're like, is McVay a top 4 or 5 coach? I think Ben Johnson and Liam Cohen today are top 10 coaches. I think they're unbelievable coaches.
Well, if you did, you kind of got to, there's 2 tiers, right? There's kind of the older group, the guys in their 60s, Andy, the Harbaugh bros. You would have Sean Payton. If you factored in age, the younger guys that maybe you thought you could get for 20 years, I think it's pretty clear. In some order, McVay, Kyle, McDonald, Ben Johnson. I think Liam Cohen, the Jags, I think they drafted in the top 5 for basically a decade straight. That's why it actually was an interesting job. They had some talent on the job, on the roster.
No, I think Cohen is. Last year it's baby step league. You're not going to walk into the playoffs and beat Buffalo, even if the game's in Jacksonville. I love Trevor Lawrence. I was going to sell all my stock. And then last year, I'm like, look what a good coach can do. Go to Caleb last year and Caleb first year. It was like a different player. That's what a great coach can do.
I think one guy on this list is a little underrated because he's not a huge personality. He's a little understated, but I don't know. He played in the league for a while. Is D'Amico?
Oh,
his defense looks like the mid-2000s Ravens.
Yeah, if I ask you this, every GM in the league, privately, Dan Campbell or Ben Johnson, who do you think they take?
I think every Lions fan would make that trade right now, don't you think? So,
I like Campbell.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this ranking list is absolutely insane. Look, I don't usually get too wrapped up in these things. I tend to use lists as starting points for conversation because this time of year, lists are king. Everyone has their own top quarterback rankings, tiers for coaches, team power rankings, wide receiver hierarchies, you name it. Everybody's got their own different lists and perspectives. But I genuinely don't think I've seen anything as ridiculous as this. I don't think I've ever come across a list this absurd. And it's not just about past accomplishments, right? We know that because Andy Reid is ranked second. First of all, Andy Reid in general is clearly number 1. But we also understand that it's not purely about your previous resume. So we're talking about right now, what are you doing in the present moment? As Middlecoff mentioned, factors like age and how many more years you'll get out of a coach, maybe 20 or so, come into play. I might not even be looking at it through that exact lens necessarily, but I will consider you through the lens of, do I feel like you're still bringing it? Do I still feel like you're ready to go? Do you still have that fire? Sean Payton, for example, is no longer calling plays. 10 years ago, he would never have given up play calling. That just wouldn't have happened. So the idea that Ben Johnson is ranked below Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur, Dan Campbell, Nick Sirianni, Mike Vrabel, Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton, Mike McDonald, Kyle Shanahan, and Andy Reid, it's just so absurd. I could literally just sit here for the next 10 minutes and say, this is ridiculous. This is absurd. This is insane. Over and over again. In what world is Dan Campbell, and people still have the audacity? This is something I go back and forth with Lions fans about. I'm not anti-Dan Campbell. I'm not anti-Detroit Lions. But they tell me that Dan Campbell made Ben Johnson. When Ben Johnson left, I said, yeah, I have concerns about the offensive coordinator situation, blah blah blah. And people responded, it's Dan Campbell's offense. He's the one who taught Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson was nothing before Dan Campbell. And I thought, I think you guys are a little confused right now. I think you're a bit mixed up. So that's just insane to me. The 2 biggest up-and-coming coaches I see are Ben Johnson and Liam Cohen. I know Mike McDonald is elite defensively, and D'Amico Ryans is elite defensively. But I would say Ben Johnson and Liam Cohen are more in the up-and-coming category because they're the newest coaches, right? McDonald hasn't been coaching for many years. D'Amico has been coaching for a few years too, I guess, 3 years. So it's a little different in terms of timeline and trajectory. But if you had to pick a coach right now, let's just remove Andy Reid from the equation. Let's actually just remove Andy altogether because we know his career is coming to a close, right? We know that. So I think it's a bit hard. are to play this game of who do you want to be your coach over the next 5 or 10 years, because with Andy, you know he's going to retire soon. For me, it would be Sean McVay at number 1. And I'd want to go number 2 with Kyle Shanahan. But since I've seen so much out of Kyle Shanahan, if I was being conservative, right? If we're playing the game and you have to pick right now, if I was being conservative, I'd say, okay, I'm going to pick Shanahan because he has stood the test of time. I know he can run a team. I know he can adjust, adapt, work with different quarterbacks. His resume speaks volumes to that, multiple Super Bowl appearances, getting to a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo, all that stuff. But if I'm not playing that conservative side of the game, the one where we ask who has the most upside, who do I believe can truly transform my team and put me in the absolute highest position to succeed, then it's going to be Ben Johnson. Because he is also calling the plays. He is running the offense. It's his vision. And I trust his ability to run a team, his attention to detail, making sure practices are run appropriately, running effective meetings. People respect him. He can work with various quarterbacks. If Caleb Williams has to get cut, I'm not saying he's obviously going to get cut, I'm just saying hypothetically, if he gets cut and it's a mayday, what are we going to do, situation, I trust that Ben Johnson can find ways through it. Whether it's a backup quarterback, another rookie quarterback, drafting someone in the second round, I believe in that flexibility. Shane Steichen isn't even on this list, and that's actually pretty insane to me. This is why I don't love lists, because I genuinely appreciate all these coaches. I think Mike Macdonald is absolutely awesome and elite and deserves all the credit in the world. What he's done with the Seahawks is unbelievable. So it's not that I dislike any of them, but I'd take another coach ahead of him. I don't love playing the ranking game, but I was going to say I'm taking Shane Steichen over Matt LaFleur. I'm taking Shane Steichen over Jim Harbaugh right now. I think Harbaugh is elite and an awesome coach as well, but I'm looking at it through a certain lens. I'm almost always looking at it through a quarterback lens. When I answer these types of questions, sometimes I have to ask myself, am I looking at this as if I'm the quarterback right now, who do I want as my coach? Or am I looking at it through the lens of being the owner? The GM? A fan? It also depends on the situation. If my team is an absolute mess and we are going nowhere, a disaster, no quarterback, the GM is a clown, the owner is clueless, then yeah, I want a Harbaugh. Give me Harbaugh right now because he can transform my team. He can bring my team to life from nothing. But if I have a really good quarterback who's in his second or third year and hasn't quite hit his peak yet, and we have a pretty good defense but our offense is lacking a bit, then Harbaugh is not at the top of my list. Mike Macdonald isn't at the top of my list either. So that's why these questions, even when we're talking about coaches, depend heavily on the situation. Do you have a coach? Do you have a quarterback? Do you need to draft a quarterback? Do you have a legitimate veteran? By the time Mike McCarthy came to Dallas, Dak Prescott had already been in the league for about 5 years. When Pat Shurmur got there, he'd been in the league since 2017. That's a big difference between coaching Dak and coaching Caleb Williams in his second year or Drake May in his second year. Even when we're trying to play this ranking game, you have to ask, what's the situation? Are you the Arizona Cardinals? Because if you're the Cardinals right now, give me Harbaugh. I don't necessarily need an offensive genius. I'd love an offensive genius. I'd love a play caller, a quarterback whisperer. But you know what I really need? A coach who can actually transform my culture, who can actually run practices properly, who can actually guide my GM to draft the players we need. I need everything right now, not just one singular thing. That matters. That's why Andy Reid deserves even more credit for turning the Kansas City Chiefs into an actual functional franchise, even with Alex Smith, before taking it to the next level obviously with Mahomes. That's why when you have coaches that I firmly believe can do both, like the Sean McVays of the world, it's special. It's not to say that Ben Johnson can't do both. It's just that we haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen that quite yet. Same thing with Liam Cohen. But if I'm looking at it through the lens of my team is good, but I need to get to the next level, there's juice there, there's potential. That's what the Chicago Bears were. We know there were some issues with the offensive line and whatnot, but they had a lot of pieces, a lot of weapons, the number 1 pick at quarterback. They had the ingredients. What do we need to get this to the next level? That's the lens I'm looking through. And I'm asking, How are you not taking Ben Johnson? You're going to take Dan Campbell? No. Not at all. Am I taking Mike Vrabel? Not doing that. So it's fascinating to me. I don't know how Ben Johnson at this moment in time can be below Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur, Dan Campbell. Those are the main names. They made a joke about how Lions fans would pick Dan Campbell over Ben Johnson, where actually, they would take Ben Johnson over Dan Campbell. And that's absolutely true. I think there are a lot of other teams that have coaches ranked ahead of Ben Johnson who would take him right now. I find that pretty absurd. Eagles fans would take Ben Johnson over Nick Sirianni. Eagles fans would take Shane Steichen over Nick Sirianni right now. I firmly believe that. That's why I made the joke about Sean Mannion, the offensive coordinator for the Eagles. If he does great, and Jalen Hurts looks better than ever, and the offense is back on track and balling, then you're going to have a lot of Eagles fans saying, no, don't let him leave. Fire Sirianni. Pay him $100 million to make him stay here. So it's just, I don't know. I also think there's just such versatility with offensive coaches that defensive coaches lack. No doubt about it. Defense is needed. D'Amico, if we just look at the two defenses that were really special, the Texans and the Seahawks, and you're looking at the two defensive head coaches, they have quarterbacks with some question marks, whether it's C.J. Stroud or Sam Darnold. And they are truly at the mercy of their coordinators in that regard. And if those coordinators work well, especially with those two types of quarterbacks, those coordinators are out the door. We literally saw that with Clint Kubiak. I'd rather try to figure out whether we can still make our defense pretty good with a brand new coordinator after the old one got hired, rather than trying to figure out how to make it work with my quarterback. The quarterback position is just too important to me. I will always feel more comfortable with an offensive head coach, the one who's actually calling plays. I defend the walk-around coaches. I defend those conversations. I defend the defensive coaches. But at the end of the day, I feel best when I know my head coach is on offense, calling the plays, and responsible for having the real conversations with my quarterback. That is what's most important to me. If I am the owner, the GM, the fan, or the quarterback, that is what I want. That matters most to me. I find that incredibly important. And we've seen endless examples of this. You say Harbaugh is the sixth best coach in the NFL right now. And again, I love Harbaugh. But he had to go out and hire Mike McDaniel. Sean McVay doesn't have to go out and hire Mike McDaniel. Ben Johnson doesn't have to go out and hire Mike McDaniel. That matters. That has to be factored in. Mike Vrabel did an awesome job. He is Tom Brady's offensive coordinator. That's who he has. If he just gets there and has Kevin Patullo as his coordinator, does Drake May look as good right now? Do they get to the Super Bowl? I don't know, man. Literally Tom Brady's offensive coordinator has to count for something, no? And we can play the game of, well, he wasn't a good head coach because that's different, it's a different skill set. So yeah. I just don't know. If I look at it this way, and I'll end here, if I'm starting a franchise brand new. Like, hey, you ready? We're going to do this thing called the National Football League. We need coaches. Who do you want? If I'm factoring in age, factoring in everything, my top picks are going to be in no exact order: McVay, Andy Reid, Shanahan, Ben Johnson, and Liam Cohen. Those are the groups of guys that I think have the longest runway ahead of them. I'm factoring in age and all of that, their experience. NDY even gets grandfathered in. Even if he's only there for a short period of time, he's so great that if I'm starting this brand new league, even if I only got him for 3 years, he'd be able to set up a foundation. He'd be able to tell us all what we need to do. How do we run a team? How do we do this? What do we need? We need a quarterback, then a left tackle. I trust that absolute wealth of experience to just get us back on track. You can argue that Harbaugh or Payton are worth that too. But Harbaugh and Payton are not going to have the runway that Shanahan, McVay, Liam Cohen, and Ben Johnson have at this moment in time. And like I said, Andy's just too special, too elite, he gets that extra benefit of the doubt. And listen, I'm looking at Sean Payton and thinking, you're no longer calling plays. I find that really interesting. It's not like I look at Sean Payton as an old man, but I know how important coaching is to him. I know how much of a big coach he is, apparently the 5th best coach in the NFL. And now you gave up play calling, one of the main defining characteristics of who you are as a coach. He was saying that apparently he doesn't get things as fast anymore, can't get it out there as fast. And I'm just thinking, okay, that's interesting. What does that mean right now? Again, Harbaugh needed a Mike McDaniel. How do you reconcile that? So, my long-winded way of saying, having Ben Johnson this low is insane. Just his ability to get the run game going is pure perfection. I made that video after the Bears beat the Cowboys. I said the run game alone was literal poetry in motion. It was absolute perfection. I remember some fans pushed back on that, so I decided to double down. I said, alright, now we're going through some film. We went through what Ben Johnson did from a run game perspective. I used Coach Dan Casey and some of his clips and thoughts. And it was just like, look at this, absolute perfection. And that's just the run game alone. A lot of these other coaches on this list are just not bringing that. And that's just one part of one side of the ball and one aspect of that side of the ball. So Ben Johnson at 13th? That's criminal. Absolutely criminal. But then I'll end here, and I said I'd end here, but I'll definitely end here. Again, I love Kevin O'Connell. Love D'Amico. Love Matt LaFleur. I think so highly of these coaches. And if I truly had to make a list, I genuinely struggle to do it. I really would. And there are certain coaches where, even though I believe in Ben Johnson more, I would rather play for Kevin O'Connell. Now I'm looking at it through the quarterback lens. I'd rather Kevin O'Connell be my coach than Ben Johnson, just because of how I would feel more comfortable and connect more. So again, this conversation is layered with all the different ways you can look at it. But even though I would struggle with the actual rankings themselves, there is simply no universe where Ben Johnson is the 13th best ACH. And I don't want to hear, well, you've only been a head coach for 1 year, and you haven't won a Super Bowl, and so has won a Super Bowl, and so has been to a Super Bowl. I get all that. I'm not saying who has had a better career. This is the same conversation we always have with Mahomes and Lamar. We're not having conversations about who has the greater legacy or who has the better resume. Because again, if we were, Andy Reid would obviously be ahead of Sean McVay. But he's clearly not. Therefore, Mike Macdonald won a Super Bowl, Kyle Shanahan didn't. And yet Kyle Shanahan is ranked higher. So we know it's not based on just that. We know that. So you have to look beyond just the bottom line accomplishments. Those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Ben Johnson being the 13th best coach according to NBC Sports? Let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get into some discussions. Let's get into some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. Please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here. I'd absolutely love to see you be part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.